This is LXBN TV, and I'm Colin O'Keefe. Late last month, the Supreme Court issued a ruling banning mandatory life sentences for juveniles. To explain the case's impact and why the court made the right call, we bring in attorney Jayme of Laszlo Law in Colorado and author on their blog, the Boulder Criminal Law Advisor. Jayme, first off, can you explain for us the case and what exactly did the Supreme Court strike down and why did they rule the way that they did?
Sure, Colin. This case actually involves the petition of two 14-year-old offenders, Evan Miller and Contrell Jackson. Each of these boys was convicted of homicide and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Now, the judges in each of these cases had lacked the discretion or ability to sentence them to anything but the lifetime in prison without the possibility of parole due to the mandatory state requirements that any offender, be that a 48-year-old man or a 14-year-old boy who committed homicide, must be sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Now, what the Supreme Court found in this holding was that a state or federal law that mandates the sentence of lifetime in prison without the possibility of parole for a juvenile offender, that means for any individual under the age of 18 at the time of the crime, in fact violates our Eighth Amendment's prohibition against cruel and unusual punishment. The rationale behind the ruling actually has been going on for quite some time and trending in the courts for at least 25 years. And the rationale is this, is that the emotional and mental capabilities of a juvenile differ greatly from that of an adult. And what the courts have found is that since juveniles lack the mental capacity and lack the impulse control that an adult has, that therefore they should not be subjected to the same sentencing and the harsher penalties that an adult can receive. And in fact, what Justice Kagan found in writing for the majority is that juveniles do lack the impulse control. They lack the ability to comprehend the full consequences of their actions. They lack the ability to understand exactly what their actions are forming, and they lack the ability to remove themselves from dangerous situations. Even their own environment in which they're growing up in, which oftentimes, Colin, can have severe neglect and severe emotional abuse, and they're forced to live through that. And that these factors play such a part on a juvenile's mind that they become mitigating factors for a court to consider when sentencing a juvenile to the Department of Corrections. And that for a court to sentence a juvenile to the Department of Corrections for lifetime without the possibility of parole, without taking into account the mitigating factors of youth, in fact does violate our Eighth Amendment's Constitution on cruel and unusual punishment.
I see. So just how big of a change is this? Before this ruling, just how many juveniles faced mandatory life sentences?
Well, Colin, I can tell you that there's currently 29 jurisdictions in our country that have these mandatory laws. That means that requires any person, again, even a juvenile, 14 to 18 years of age, who has committed the crime of homicide, that they must receive the mandatory sentence of lifetime in prison without the possibility of parole. Even in Colorado, I believe we have about 50 juvenile offenders currently serving lifetime sentences without the possibility of parole because of the mandatory requirement under our state law. And in fact, nationwide, I want to say that the number is about 2,500 people in our prison system right now who are serving lifetime sentences without the possibility of parole for homicides that they committed before they were 18 years old. And what I find most disturbing about that number, Colin, is that 2,000 of that 2,500 were sentenced under these mandatory rules, meaning that once those people were convicted of a homicide, the judge had no choice but to sentence them to lifetime in prison without the possibility of parole. And now, with this ruling, what we have is that courts, that is no longer an option. Courts must take into consideration the mitigating factors of youth. And that is, the courts must look at the brain development of a child. They must look at the lack of impulse control. They have to look at the societal and environmental factors that surround these children before sentencing them to prison or any other sentence that stand before them for committing a crime of homicide.
I see. And on your publication, you said, I believe you said that to say you agree with this would be a vast understatement. Considering your experience, why do you see this ruling as a big positive?
And I did say that, Colin, and I do wholeheartedly believe in this decision. And the reason is this. I truly believe that children's brains do not fully develop until way past adolescence, that they truly do lack the ability to comprehend the consequences of their actions and to fully understand what it is that they're doing on their day-to-day life. And Colin, I've seen this not only as a mother of two young children, but when I was a public defender in Denver and I practiced in the Denver juvenile courts, what you see is truly the fact that children simply are not at the level of adults. They simply cannot understand the consequences of their actions. And because of that, and similar to what the courts have found and what I agree with, is that they are much more likely to be rehabilitated in our society. So what this ruling allows is it gives these kids the opportunity who have grown up under severe abuse and neglect and who have then gone on to commit these horrific crimes of homicide, but it gives them the opportunity to be rehabilitated the way that I truly believe that they can be. And that's why, Colin, I believe that this ruling is such a positive on our criminal justice system.
Certainly, certainly. Well, once again, that was Jayme Moss of Laszlo Law and the Boulder Criminal Law Advisor. For more insight on this case, and be sure to check out their publication. It's at bouldercriminallawadvisor.com. It's one of the newer criminal law blogs on our network, and definitely you guys are certainly going about things the right way, and it's an excellent publication, so be sure to check that out. And of course, for more LXBN TV interviews, be sure to visit us at lxbn.lexblog.com. Thank you, Jayme.
Thank you so much, Colin.